Hello and welcome. The number of Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana accounts in India has gone from about 179 million in August 2015 to about 430 million in August 2021. Now, this means that in this period, the number of people or a substantial number of people in India have got access to a bank account and thus obviously are now financially included, which lays the foundation in many ways for many more things, including overall economic growth. Interestingly, at the same time, the digital transaction trajectory has also increased dramatically thanks to the adoption of UPI in retail credit transfers. Now, this accounted for about 8.7 trillion rupees out of 260 trillion rupees of credit transfers in 18-19. Now, this was just 3%. Without getting into complex numbers, this number is now almost 12%. That means that retail credit transfers through digital route are about 12%. So this is really what many of us use in the form of either BHIM or GPay and many other, including WhatsApp. So this is on one end. On the other hand, organizations like NABARD or the National Bank for Agriculture and Rural Development are also trying to work with financial inclusion or included communities to obviously increase the spread of credit. So the NABARD, incidentally, to just give you a background, was set up in 1982 by transferring the agricultural credit functions of the Reserve Bank and the refinance functions of the then Agriculture Refinance and Development Corporation. So NABARD's development vision is to really foster rural prosperity. So when you combine these three, then the fact that the number of accounts, particularly rural, including gender, which I'll come to, have gone up dramatically, access through digital transactions or retail credit transfers has increased dramatically, and then the rural gap, so to speak, is now being increasingly filled. So where is all this heading? So to discuss this, I'm joined by the chairman of NABARD, Dr. G.R. Chintala, and hopefully we will know a little more about what the vision for NABARD is, as well as the vision for financial inclusion in India. Dr. Chintala, thank you very much for joining me. So tell us about where we stand today at this point. The pandemic, of course, hit us last year. We've seen a second wave early this year. The second wave was not as economically damaging as the first one. Now, we are obviously now increasingly trying to live with the virus rather than run from it as we were and as many other countries in the world were. So where do we stand now and where are we going?
Yeah, thank you, Govindaraj. First of all, it's very appropriate to now debate a bit on really how these entire new developments that have taken place in the economy are affecting everyone in the country. Now, financial inclusion, I would say that maybe when the word itself was not invented, somewhere in 1985-86, when NABARD first started with that SHG as a concept, that was the first financial inclusion concept in, we can say, as per this thing. So now, when we saw that time, almost close to around 95-96% of women were not having the banking accounts at all. And bankers used to keep them away. And they used to ask that, you bring somebody, either father, mother, brother, or somebody else to just prove that you are so and so and all those things. Likewise, the poor people also actually were not having the accounts. If you look at the statistics of the World Bank of that time, around 53% of the people are financially excluded. They don't have a banking account. So now, this started with that self-help group that is bringing the unreached into a kind of a reached kind of a category, giving them the banking ethics, and creating a bank account for them and subsequently making them the mainstream banking beneficiaries. So this was the entire idea. The first attempt for the financial inclusion happened. Now, subsequently, with the liberalization that had happened later and also many changes that were being brought, and this microfinance industry also has come. So slowly, this entire thing has caught on, and the people who were otherwise totally left out from the banking kind of a work, actually they were all being brought into this one. And now this Jan Dhan Yojana, which was announced by Prime Minister, I can say was the real maybe a harbinger of the dynamism into this entire system. So now by this time, the few other developments also that have taken place in the ambience. had done wonders for this entire approach. When we started the SHG and subsequently in the financial inclusion attempt, the mobile phones were absolutely unknown. Otherwise, also in the next, by 2000, they were in the primitive stage. Most of them are analog phones. But by 2013, 14, when this government has come, by that time already that normal mobile phones, smartphones were within the reach of everyone. By the time Aadhaar has become a maybe taken for granted kind of an identity for every citizen of the country. And the Janadhan, actually all these three things actually have come at a one particular proper place, that a Jam Trinity, which we call, had really brought the entire change in this entire financial inclusion. Before that, financial inclusion was happening, but it was not at this pace and scale. But today, now in the last 6-7 years, actually, if I really, because we track quite a lot what is happening. From 2014 onwards, once this entire movement has started, it started with a trickle, and today we are having 440 million Janadhan accounts. And to be very frank, almost every citizen of the country right now is having an account to deal with the bank. And the other major thing that had happened is that slowly the people started using the technology, even the rural people also, they started using the technology as to it. So whether it is the demonetization time or subsequently this pandemic, had made one thing, maybe the disruption has been brought by these two events, that people were forced to look into the alternatives of dealing with this kind of a financial transaction. So now, when I go around, actually whether it's a vegetable pushcart vendor or maybe a small fellow who is selling something, when I go and say that I want to do it, actually he will immediately bring out his QR code or something like whatever is hanging on his cart and say that, no, why can't you just scan it and send me the money? So now these people, in case if I look into their educational status, I think they may be just able to read the numbers and a little bit of alphabets, but not beyond that. But they are the ones who got the highest and the biggest benefit of this entire, maybe the financial inclusion drive, which has gone into a kind of a mobile-driven financial inclusion. And what you asked was very right, that how the technology is doing. Actually, now the technology has brought a kind of a democracy into this entire financial inclusion. Earlier, before this financial inclusion or maybe rolling out of all those things, banking was for the rich or for the people who are educated, and so remaining people were almost, they were into the hands of either money lenders or maybe the informal transfer of funds. That also used to happen. But today, now entire scenario has changed. Now today, if you look into it, at one point of a time, before this Janadhan was there used to be so many transferring agents who are a little bit organized also. They used to collect money from slums like Dharavi or Delhi or some other place, and they used to transfer this fund to their native places by charging maybe some amount of commission, though it was very legal and safe, but at the same time people are paying. But now today, this particularly post-pandemic or during the pandemic, the technology has evolved so fast that your maybe the UPI and the associated apps, whether it is PhonePe, Google Pay, Samsung Pay, or you just name any kind of a thing, all these players have made the life so comfortable to people. Simply, you have to just download that app and link it with your bank, and your work is done. And now today, if I really look into any of the people who I generally talk, even outside the office, that is walking on the streets of Kurla and others, I generally talk to the people, what exactly is happening. They say that now life has become so comfortable, no need to carry the big wares of money to purchase a thing. And simply they can go to the place and very safely transact. And absolutely in this particular thing, actually cyber security threat also was not so big. This is what we observed. Cyber security is happening at a mega level maybe, but at the small level of these transactions, actually nobody had complained. So now a robust mechanism has been put in. So now here I will say that the concerted effort of everyone, first thing is we have to give the utmost credit to the government of India for making it the big dream to come into a reality. Then the regulatory done by the regulatory work done by the Reserve Bank of India. Then the other private players actually who pitched in. all the technology developers, then the phone carriers, and subsequently the vendors, then maybe retailers, wholesalers, everybody tried to latch on to this kind of a technology. And today, most of the things are happening. And I feel that 440 million Jan Dhan accounts, if they are having a deposits of close to around 1 trillion, actually that itself is a very big thing, because most of the Jan Dhan accounts were for the very poor segment of the population. And in case if these people are having some money, then it is good. Then the next great thing that had happened with this entire financial inclusion drive, which ultimately led to the seamless and the corruption-free transfer of the benefits of the government. Actually now, as NABARD in chairman, we also now do quite a lot of interest subvention schemes of the government of India. We transfer money to various institutions or maybe anybody. So that time we'll say that actually this has become a seamless transfer. Now, if 500 rupees is the entitlement the government of India or the state government has given to a particular person, he is getting full 500 without any kind of a cut. And this we have come in a long way. When the vegan prime minister in 1985-86, he told that only some 16 or 17 paise of 100 paise is getting transferred to the poor in the kind of benefit scheme. So now benefit schemes have become maybe people can be very safe to assume that whatever be the government's kind of a largesse they are going to get, they are getting in full. And the technology had made it so easy for them to do it. The moment somebody presses the button in PFMS and the millions and billions of accounts get the transactions or the money transferred to their accounts, and almost in the next few moments they can start using it. Now that is how that ease has become, the life has become so easy. And it has become corruption-free, it has become pilferage-free, and also that it had compressed the time from earlier months and days to seconds or even nanoseconds. So that is how actually I feel that we are maybe one of the best financially included nation in the world. And whenever I see the things that are happening abroad, I think many of the advanced countries, which we call, they were not into this thing in such a great way.
Right. Okay. So let me pose 2 or 3 questions. So first is, now this is the building blocks, if we were to call this the building block for financial inclusion, for better financial access. Now, to what extent is this going to be, as you look ahead, particularly from your vantage point, NABARD, a multiplier for the economy itself? So we've definitely accelerated transfers, but accelerating transfers itself may or may not lead to economic growth. For economic growth or sustained economic growth, we may need other factors. So maybe if you could comment on that. The second part. Okay, well, why don't you finish with that? Then let me come to the second question.
Yeah, with regard to the maybe the taking part in the economy. We are avid readers of so many things that are happening all over the world and also in the economy. Now, this pandemic anyhow was a dampener in the last 2 years. So the country's economy, which was going at a reasonably very strong pace, had taken a beating. But some sectors have fared well, like agriculture, which we are looking into. But with regard to the financial inclusion, even with this pandemic, barring those years where, those months where the lockdowns were very strict, the institutions started working in delivering the needed finances to the poor and the needy. So now whether it is the microfinance institutions or banks or maybe through the SHG or any kind of a thing systems. But as what you are asking, really, after having achieved this building block, really where we can go. Now, I feel that in case, God forbid, if nothing happens in the next 1 decade, I am foreseeing this country is going to witness a tremendous and phenomenal growth with regard to the economy and with regard to the inclusion that is going to happen. Now, the $5 trillion by 25, 26, or even if it is achieved even by 27, that means in the next 5-6 years, if we go by that 2.5 to 3x of the present day, the similar way, the poor and the unreached also have to grow, the people in the informal also. Now, the GST has brought a lot of informal people into the formal sector. And this financial inclusion had made one more wonderful thing. Actually, many people might not have noticed. everybody's credit history is being made, which was absolutely not there at all even few years back. Now today, even the poorest of the poor woman or a man, when he or she transacts business on this mobile with this kind of a thing, everything is getting recorded. And now most of the companies have linked it to the CICs, and the CICs are creating the credit history. And also that now the account aggregators have come. So now that is one beautiful thing that had happened. So now these account aggregators and the CIC related kind of a reports, and also the transaction history of this entire, maybe the people what they are doing, it is going to give a very big kind of a mileage to the lady or a man who otherwise was not considered as bankable at maybe a few years back. Now today, the moment the credit history is made, actually I can say in the next 2 or 3 years, even these people will be chased by the mainstream banks and also others who are into this kind of a digital transactions.
Right.
To just
and would you say that?
So
right.
we are
would
very
you say
confident and we are doing it.
Right. And would you say that you are seeing from your vantage point at NABARD, you're seeing more rural, let's say, whether it's farmers or non-farmers, one is of course gain access to the banking system, but secondly, actually able to, let's say, either start new ventures or get better loans or better credit because of the fact that they are now in the rating system?
Yeah, now it is not only rural. Now actually that when I look into the rural, actually most of the rural people are coming to the urban area. So now actually they still have a link. So now the urban poor is also part of the earlier rural. So now what actually they are going to do is that the quantums, now as we were discussing in various forums, whether the present day money the banks are giving, because generally all these people, first time when they're included, they will give a very small dose by these, whether it is MFIs or the bank. They say that this lady or a man will be given some 15,000 or 10,000 to start with, and they will make them to work and repay, and the history is done. Afterwards, progressively they will do it. But now with this technology and the way the MLA and so many things are just tracking everyone seamlessly and tirelessly, that everybody's credit history now can be seen even within 6 months of entering into this kind of a net. So now the quantums are going to see a leapfrogging is going to happen in this one. So now that the 15 or 19,000 rupees which we are witnessing right now as the general microfinance loans, whether it is urban or rural, people are getting, they are going to get a much higher quantum because the banks now have got a solid database to analyze each and everyone and also give them the required kind of a thing. The other thing which now already the work is already done, now whether it is under 59 kind of an this one or maybe something now today, even for the Kisan credit cards and also the normal loan generation systems, the online applications are being devised in a very big way. So now anybody can just do with, because now the KYC is verified in a very easy way. Now KYC is verified in a few seconds. And subsequently that online application, if you feel what is your requirement and what are the things, and the entire verification is done by the machine. And in a few moments, probably maximum maybe around half an hour or 1 hour, the concerned financial institution, whether it may be the bank or NBFC or anybody else, now actually they can take a decision whether we can give the loan. So in that way, that we have compressed the things to such a level that the credit decisions also can be taken without any kind of a bias, and the machine itself will take the decision to start with, and subsequently the human being who is there on the top of it can use his rationale and do the final credit decision making. And that is how that the people have to migrate, because this $5 trillion economy requires everyone to be part of this economy in a big way, and they require the needed credit support. So now the present day financial inclusion, we are mostly talking about maybe the subsidy driven or maybe the enabling kind of an environment. But thing is, tomorrow we require the institutional credit to push the entire micro enterprise into a very big one, or maybe micro, small, any kind of thing. So now that is where this present mechanism that is being totally It is enmeshed right now. CICs, KYC people, then carriers, then Aadhaar, then MPCI, just name anything, whoever is working in this one. Actually, everybody has created a kind of a great system. And the person who is using, actually, he is oblivious of all the things that is happening at the background. But thing is, he is the biggest beneficiary. And that is what actually we have to aim at.
Right. So let me, amongst the last one or two questions, let me focus on gender and also refer to the Inclusive Finance India report. Now, microfinance lending is targeted considerably or mostly at women borrowers. The exclusive women self-help groups as of March 21 were, according to this report, 9.7 million out of 11 million bank-linked self-help groups. Similarly, and you referred to this as well earlier, 56% of Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana accounts, or no-frills accounts as they call sometimes, are in the name of women beneficiaries. So it's a fact that we have been able to improve the quality of targeting women both at the self-help group level as well as financial inclusion. Now, from your point of view, how do we? I mean, what is your? How do we build on this, and what are you seeing that allows or is seeing more greater gender participation, not just in inclusion, but also driving economic activity and entrepreneurship?
No, it's a very, very important question. As we are all looking into it, that now this 50% of the nation's population was neglected, not for 1 or 2 years, they were neglected for centuries. Actually, they are never part of the economic activity of the family, and their opinions are never considered at one point of it. But today, after this entire movement started in the last 30-35 years, and that democratic kind of a decision making has come in the household itself. So how all these things happen? Because we started mainstreaming women. Now, if I look into that SHG philosophy, subsequently adopted by everyone, Government of India, everyone, and they say that now women are the best borrowers. And this is proven. Why? Because women had got that kind of ability to save even from the meager amount she was getting from her husband or son, and subsequently saving it for the rainy day to do something else, which is very productive kind of a work, or maybe spending on the children for their nutrition, good dress, health, or maybe sending them to schools. So now this philosophy we had adopted from the day one, and subsequently the same thing has been adopted by the entire kind of thing, the financial inclusion. Now, what you told is right, that out of almost close to around 11 to 12 million self-help groups which we have in the country, close to 9.5 million groups are exclusively women. And again, if you look into their transaction level kind of a data, all these women, even after getting 2 times, 3 times, or 5 doses of the microfinance from the banks, they still maintain the recovery level of close to around 95-96%. If you look into that NPS in the microfinance with such a kind of a big, maybe a group of people who are borrowing, close to around 100 to 120 million people are getting small amounts from the banking system, but collectively, this 120 million women are having an NPA of only 4%. So that is the marvelous thing. And the same thing is now translated into the microfinance institutions also. Now, if you look into the MFIs also, their target is mostly women, because women are the best borrowers and the best repayers also. And many a times, actually, we have seen that the women, because we attend most of the meetings at the ground level also, where the women congregate every 15 days or something. Our people will attend, and when we were in the junior level, that time. Now, these people have got that kind of a concern. If the repayment is next Monday, from this Monday itself, actually, they will have such kind of how to organize the funds and what are things. The same thing, actually, you cannot see in the men folk. Not because earlier they were taking it for granted. Anything can happen, nothing is going to befall on them. But today it is not the case. So now the woman is the driving force in the family, and she is the decision maker. And you can see the benefit of this entire thing, making the entire movement woman-centric. Most of the poor women also, who are members of the SHGs, their family sizes have come down substantially. They are also having only 1 or 2 kids, and they are able to send their children to the schools and give them the better health and education. And so this movement is very important. And the other one which you asked, really how to make them as a kind of a big driving workforce. Yesterday only I was looking into one of the papers. Somebody has written that Bangladesh in the entire Asia actually is the one which country employs maximum number of women in the economy, both in the formal and informal sector. And that is how, despite all these things, Bangladesh is progressing very well. So now everybody has to take a cue from that. Can we make at least 50% of our women folk to do some kind of a productive work when compared to 20 to 24% right now we are engaging them? The moment that is done, I think it got a cascading effect. Once a girl sees her mother working, probably the girl would never like to sit at home. She also would try to improve her capability, and she also go for this one. And this is the one, I think the nation has got a tremendous kind of a scope once the women are mainstreamed in a big way. And they are brought into the both formal and informal sector kind of an employment and this financial inclusion. And that is the day when we can say that we have done so much for the financial inclusion. That is what I feel.
Right. Last question, Dr. Chintala. So as you look at 2022, what are your broad thrust areas when it either in the context of inclusion or in terms of overall credit growth and access?
Now, 22-23, actually, we are very upbeat now, because even despite the pandemic, again, I will say that now some of the institutions and also the sectors like agriculture and also the institutions based on agriculture like NABARD, even in the pandemic year, we have posted a tremendous growth. And this year also, now already despite the second wave which came maybe during April, May, I think the effect has ebbed quite fast, though it was lethal. But thing is now the economy has gone into the fourth gear, at least we can say, the way the things are happening. Now, though the third wave, whatever is, whether it is happening or not, we don't know. But thing is, people have reasonably discounted this Omicron threat, and they are doing their own routine work without any kind of a hindrance. So now I feel that in the 22-23, which we are going to enter maybe shortly, that this COVID threat will be forgotten. And the economies are going to do it, and the export markets are booming. So now the entire thing, both the formal and informal sectors are going to have a very great day. The moment that is done, actually all the engines will be on fire, and we are going to do quite a lot of a growth. So now we are projecting quite a lot of things for the both agriculture credit, because as an agricultural credit institution, like last year we achieved out of against 15.7 lakh crores was the entire banking sector delivered the agricultural credit, and this time the target is 16.5 lakh crores, and already it's in a right trajectory. By November end, actually we had done substantial mileage we have done. Then next year it is going to maybe another 5 or 10% more, and so that is the agricultural part. With regard to the microfinance also, every year, actually, the sector is maybe growing at almost around 10-15%, or even sometimes it is even more in some of the entities. So now, the moment the economy gets revved up, it's going to be a fantastic kind of a run in the years. That is, God forbid, if nothing, a calamitous thing is going to happen, I think the microfinance, inclusion, and the normal credit operations are going to get a big leg up in the year to come. And all institutions, and particularly institutions like NABARD, are geared up for that kind of a great growth which we are going to witness.
Right. Dr. Chintala, it was a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. Thank you.